I don't believe God made anybody homosexuals, just as if I don't believe God made anybody a thief.
Bishop Harold Blair is one of the leading religious figures in Jamaican society, and one of the few local voices who has condemned violence against gays. However, he does not believe that Jamaica will ever, or should ever, accept openly gay lifestyles.
Jamaica is a homophobic society. We grew up to dislike homosexuals. We grew up to hate homosexuality, and you'll notice what I've just said. Growing up as a young preacher, by the time I was about 30, my 4 boys were already born. And I said then I would give my life for them. And there were 2 things I would never allow anybody to do to my boys. And that was to turn them into homosexuals and to give them drugs.
Dr. Robert Carr, the executive director of the Caribbean Vulnerable Communities Coalition, has spent many years studying the roots of homophobia in Jamaica.
Somehow it's become completely acceptable, and not just acceptable, it's become appropriate to have really negative attitudes about gay people. They see it as part of Jamaica's natural cultural history and national identity, and they see it even as appropriate for Christian values.
Anti-gay sentiments seem to permeate all levels of Jamaican society, and most people refer to the Bible to justify these beliefs.
I say it's morally wrong. I look at the Bible. It's biblically, and we're Jamaicans, we're quite religious people.
The thing with Jamaicans is, even though we don't like it, at the end of the day it's your choice, but don't bring it to our face and put it in front of us. We don't want to see that.
They try to change
They're
you.
out there with it.
You're supposed to accept it, and whatever you do, I'll be in your face, I am gay, and there's nothing you can do about it. People in Jamaica don't like that. And if you're against something, you're going to, the ignorant people, as what Derek said, they're going to get very radical, and people going to start dying.
God's concept is an Adam and an Eve, a man and a woman, for continuity of the human race. And I hate the act of homosexuality because it has the possibility within it to cause the human race to become extinct.
On this evening's panel discussion, we explore the steps that have been made in Jamaica relating to the LGBTQ movement. There was a time that Jamaica was classified amongst the most homophobic countries in the world. However, that perception has seemingly changed over the years. Is it because Jamaicans are becoming more accepting, or has it been a result of the social influence exerted by the LGBT community? Tonight we welcome a pair of guests who appear to be on opposite sides of the issue. Dr. Daniel Thomas, President of the Love March Movement, and Glenroy Murray, Acting Executive Director of Equality for All. And thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man, thank you so much.
I'd like to start with you, Dr. Thomas. Are we in a place where society has moved beyond certain preconceived notions and more towards a place of acceptance that certain parts of society has yet to catch up to?
Well, the latest bill, the Bill Johnson poll of 2020 concerning the burglar law revealed that 93% of Jamaicans still believe that the burglar law should be retained. So if we're talking about the law itself and the behavior that the law speaks to, that is our current position as a people.
Current position. Mr. Murray, there are those who would say that what you're advocating is little more than the destruction of traditional Jamaican society. How would you respond to that, sir?
I mean, before I even go there, I think it's important to frame the conversation appropriately. If we're talking about progress in Jamaica, we can't just measure it by one specific law, which is the burglary law, as Daniel pointed out, when more than half of Jamaicans believe LGBT Jamaicans should have equal access to education, for example, and between 2015 and 2018, there was a 5% increase in tolerant and positive attitudes towards LGBT Jamaicans. So they would like to reduce attitudes towards LGBT Jamaican towards one law that persons have very specific attitudes around. but that is not that's not how you fully measure attitudes. And to respond to your question, I think what we are in fact asking for is equal treatment, to be recognized as full and equal citizens like every other Jamaican, since we've been contributing to the development of this society for quite some time.
Mr. Murray, and what does that equal treatment look like? Explain for us. What exactly does that look like?
Well, the reality is that 1 in 5 LGBT Jamaicans have experienced displacement at some point in their lifetimes based on a 2019 needs assessment that we've conducted. Another reality is that there are no laws currently which prohibit discrimination when someone is accessing, when someone is looking for a job, for example, on the basis of their sexual orientation or gender identity. If they're discriminated against, then there's no recourse. And so equal treatment is about whenever those instances of discrimination happens, that person has some level of recourse, that you're able to report to the police comfortably and not be concerned that you will be denied, for example, or that you'll have a negative experience, or that when you access any government service that you won't be treated unfairly when you access just general public services. So it's just about being able to navigate Jamaican society just like anybody else would.
Mr. Murray, just hold that point. We have to take a break. Our panel discussion continues after these. Welcome back, and we're still looking at the steps that have been made in Jamaica relating to the LGBTQ movement. Still with us, we have in studio Dr. Daniel Thomas, President of the Love March Movement, and Glenroy Murray, Acting Executive Director of Equality for All. And Dr. Thomas, I wanted you to respond to what Glenroy just mentioned as to what the community is really asking for. They just want to be treated as equals. What's so difficult about that?
Right. So Glenroy and the LGBTQ agenda really comes off as something that is so innocuous and benign. But if you were to Google, for example, the J-Flags LGBT agenda, they have actually put out a magazine from in 2018 online where they have outlined many different changes that they would like for the entire society concerning the family, concerning medical school. They want well, concerning every single sector of society that you can think about, sports, medicine. So they're talking about an overhauling of our entire country, and in keeping with things that we do not agree with as a people in terms of the behavior, in terms of moving towards same-sex marriage. That is something that as a people we do not agree with. And so what they're asking for really is special rights. It's not just normal rights. All of us in Jamaica have the same rights. We have the right to life. We have the right, as outlined in the UN Declaration of Human Rights, you understand? But what they're asking for is to change the definition of certain words in order to prioritize sexual orientation in a protected category, and we don't think that's necessary.
Well, given the history of the LGBTQ in Jamaica, the sanctions that have been placed upon them, do they not have the right to advocate for their position in society?
Which sanctions?
The Buggery Law, for one, comes to mind.
The Buggery Law is not a sanction on the LGBT community. The Buggery Law speaks to the fact that a particular behavior is...
A behavior between two consenting adults, sir.
No problem. It has negative implications for the country, negative in terms of medically speaking.
Please explain the negative implications.
Well, men who have sex with men have been found to have about, well, 34% of the MSM community has been found to have HIV based on the studies. The Lancet 2012 came out and said that buggery, right, which is anal penetration, that behavior causes a very high spreading of the HIV virus because of role reversibility, and also the act itself, because the anus is not a sexual organ. It is actually the end of a digestive tube, and so it's not made for that kind of interaction to take place. And so what the law does, it protects us from certain things. And the law itself, the Buggery Law, also protects freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of conscience, protection of parental rights. So we are talking about the overhauling of our entire society. It's an important discussion for us to have, okay? But we cannot we cannot approach it from the perspective thinking that it is just innocent. It's not innocent, and many nations have gone this route already, demonstrating clearly the direction that this goes. And as a people, we need to have that discussion.
Mr. Murray, I'll just have you respond to that. You want special rights and you want to upend our society. Respond.
Nothing of the sort. I mean, I found it interesting that Daniel referenced the gay agenda, which we did publish in 2018. Thank you for mentioning that. And in it, we recommended very simple things like reduction of youth unemployment, for example, because that affects our community too. We recommended social safety nets because that affects our community too. When we talked about sports, we actually recommended looking at how do we support our sportsmen and women beyond the sporadic moments that they perform for us internationally. And so we presented a vision of Jamaica that was inclusive and broad. And yes, there were spaces that we talked about LGBT-specific issues. But Daniel did misrepresent some things when he talked about us asking for same-sex marriage. We actually did not ask for that. What we asked for was a protection of family law protections for unmarried same-sex unions. In the same way that common law unions in Jamaica between a man and a woman is recognized, we ask that over time, such protections benefit same-sex couples as well. So for example, in a domestic violence situation, if a man hits a woman, she can get protection under the law, under the Domestic Violence Act. That same protection does not extend to two-woman relationships. And we don't think that's fair because abuse is abuse, for example. And so it's not an upending of society. It's making sure all of the problems and holes in the laws are fixed. Now, if I take you back, since Daniel is fixated on talking about the Buggery law, we can talk about the most horrendous incident the other day where a young girl was buggered by 5 adult men. And the maximum penalty for buggery is 10 years. Our research shows that the Buggery law actually affects women and children more because it is the only law that criminalizes forced anal penetration. Buggery law doesn't help Jamaica. What it does is give less punishment to people who anally rape children and women. And so I'm not going to stand here and advocate for the retention of a law that does not benefit the society in the way that Daniel is saying. And fear-mongering around HIV is not going to change that reality.
It's not going to change the statistics and the facts of the situation.
Your statistics are wrong because the most recent study, the 876 study, said it was 29.1%. And the study also pointed out that the issue of why there's, of course, having anal receptive sex does increase your risk for HIV as opposed to receptive vaginal sex. We will accept that. But the reality is stigma and discrimination as far as accessing treatment, care, and support is the main barrier for vulnerable communities like men who have sex with men, for example, to reduce their risk for HIV. It's the fact that they don't feel comfortable going to hospitals, talking about what is happening with them. They don't feel comfortable buying condoms and lubrication and talking about their realities because talking about it is confessing to a crime, for example. Why the rates are so high. It's bad for public health. Keeping these laws are bad for HIV, and that's what data shows.
This is not true.
Okay, gentlemen.
This is not true.
Yeah, I don't want to
gentlemen.
The studies that were done in countries that did not have any stigma. This is not true information. Go ahead.
So, the issue of agenda came up. The gay agenda, the Love March movement agenda, and the issue of, during Pride Month, United States Embassy flew the pride flag, not just here in Jamaica, but around the world. Now, it should be noted that as an embassy, that is legitimately sovereign U.S. territory, and they have the right to do so.
That's not true.
Unless I'm mistaken.
You're mistaken, yeah.
And how am I mistaken, please, sir?
Yes, that was that.
So the property that we have actually lent to the United States for this purpose, it is not sovereign U.S. territory. It is Jamaican territory, and that matter has been dealt with from several angles. Professor Stephen Vassiani wrote an amazing article clarifying that when we had the whole discussion with Minister Malahou Fort, when she had her tweet, you will remember with the shooting that happened. So persons can check that article. For example, if a baby is born on that property, they are not a U.S. citizen. You understand? If a divorce takes place. So there are different angles that that question has been taken. It is unviolable, meaning that it is considered to be an area that Jamaica should not barge in on, and we have to be, well, we have determined that we have signed the Vienna Convention, and so we have to be courteous, and they should be courteous to us as well. But that is where my issue comes in. The Vienna Convention speaks to how diplomatic relations are supposed to go. And the flying of the rainbow flag, the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender flag, that is a breach of Article 3(1)(e) of the Vienna Convention, Article 20 and Article 41 of the Vienna Convention that governs this whole discussion.
Did the Jamaican government make a formal complaint concerning this issue?
I am very concerned that the Jamaica Coalition for a Healthy Society have been told, sent a letter to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and there was no response to that letter. But if you would look at the articles, Article 20 actually speaks to what flag should be flown, okay, because it seems like those that formed the Vienna Convention, they probably had the thought that maybe people want to fly other flags other than their national flag. So it actually says verbatim that this flag, the only flag that should be shown should be a flag of the nation. That is what should be at the embassy, on transportation, and also at the property that is given to them. But America just has determined that they want to breach this simple protocol. Article 3(1)(e) speaks to the need to be friendly in their approach and also to facilitate the development of our culture and our scientific development as well. Article 41 is also breached, and it speaks to the importance of not interfering in a nation. It says without prejudice. This kind of thing should not happen. Okay, that the receiving state should be respected. Our laws and our customs should be respected. But that is also just being thrown out. And America is doing it to many nations, I agree, across the world, but not nations that are violent. And I'm not advocating violence at all. But I'm just saying it's very interesting that in many Muslim countries, in Muslim countries in North Africa, etc., they have not dared to do that because they have more respect for those persons. Yeah.
Mr. Murray, when it comes to the... Please.
I just want to say that if we remember correctly, back in 2018, Jamaica, in its wisdom, prevented somebody who spewed very similar messages to what Daniel is saying about the LGBT community, about intolerance, from entering its own borders. So I'm not sure that flying a flag in solidarity with the LGBT community, and there are LGBT Jamaicans like myself here in Jamaica, is such an affront to Jamaican society. If Jamaica itself decided that it was problematic for somebody with very widely known homophobic and problematic views from entering its own.
Mr. Murray, I'd like to
use of these words.
Mr. Murray, if I may. Mr. Murray.
Wait, hold up.
The issue at hand is that within Jamaican society, we have long had certain traditions, we have long had certain standards, which your organization, which individuals such as yourself, just by being, are in violation of. Now, how hard would it be for you and your community to simply be quiet, live your lives, and not push this agenda on Jamaican society? And why could you not do that?
So that question suggests that we aren't a part of Jamaican society, that that we are somehow formed as a separate entity from Jamaican society. We're very much Jamaicans, and we actually celebrate our local pride in August 1 to 6, and it's coming up, and we're looking very forward to our usual celebrations. Of course, because of the COVID context, we will be doing it virtually. The reality is we are as much a part of this society, and we've always been a part of this society. We have an LGBT movement that has been around since 1978 when the gay freedom movement started. And so to pretend that we haven't been a part of history is actually injurious, and it's harmful. We have been here, and we've always been speaking up, and we've contributed in significant ways. We're doctors, lawyers, teachers, we're your neighbors, and we've supported you in many ways, and all we are saying is
we only have so much time left.
Just as much space to this country as anyone else.
And Dr. Thomas, Dr. Thomas, I just want you to respond to, even as we close, the argument. How would you respond to the argument that groups like yours, Love March movement, that you are really contributing to this kind of intolerance? And so intolerance and disagreement really, you know, not the same. How would you respond?
You got 10 seconds.
Yeah, man, I just want to say, Glenn Wright actually called the Vienna Convention intolerant and homophobic. I thought that was very interesting. In terms of your question, I think that as a Jamaican society, we have to determine which direction that we're going to go, okay? We care about all people, but not all behaviors are right. Not all behaviors should be the basis of law. And so we have to have that discussion. We have to look at the science. We have to actually look at the facts about the situation. What has happened to these other countries? Do we want to go the route that America has gone with their comprehensive sexuality education and what they have done to their children? Do we want to go that route? Blue's Clues has taken over Sesame Street. You know, this is a very serious discussion. Our voice is really just here to speak some truth, and we're doing it in a way that communicates the value of the human being, but also of the nation and the family.
That's all the time we have. Thank you both, and we will be back with more CVM Live. We have lifestyle entertainment after this quick break.
Insisting in recent years there's been an increase in attempts to curb the Jamaican society into acceptance of the LGBTQ+ community, President of the Love March movement is calling for an immediate halt. This after the U.S. Embassy, again in recognition of June as Pride Month, raised the pride flag largely associated with the non-conforming group. In response, the Love March movement has pledged to flock the embassy 6 days each week to decry the hoisting while lambasting the perceived symbolism behind the gesture, which challenges deeply ingrained societal norms.
Because we believe that it is important to take a stand against this kind of message that they're trying to send to our people, which is the normalization of homosexuality, lesbianism, bisexuality, and transgenderism. It's important to note that they fly this flag in breach of the Vienna Convention, Articles 3(1)(e), Article 20, and Article 41.
The Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties speak to the importance of treaties as a source of international law and as a means of developing peaceful cooperation among nations, whatever their constitutional and social systems.
Well, what we're saying is that we're not against any group of people, but we're against certain behaviors. The LGBT flag is a political symbol of the advancement of an agenda which works itself out in laws and policies. As seen in the United States, that flag is flown when they have pride marches through the streets. That flag is flown when they have like the same-sex marriage ruling, things like that. So it's not simply about the people, but there's a political ideology. And Jamaica is not party to such a political ideology. Our motto is out of many one people. And so, you know, we are welcoming to people, but we're not welcoming to all behaviors.
Dr. Thomas is urging officials in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to intervene while imploring Jamaicans to stand up for their beliefs and culture.
For the Jamaican people, I would like just to challenge you never to accept this kind of promotion of the LGBT agenda as just something normal in our society. If you see something, say something. If you find that your children are being taught something in school, or if something is happening at your workplace where they're promoting homosexuality, speak up and say something you can.
The LGBTQ+ Pride Month in the United States commemorates the Stonewall riots, the uprising of gay rights movement that occurred in June 1969. Natalia Clark, CVM Live.
Minister Andrew Holness has spoken about an issue that many Jamaicans are sensitive about: homosexuality and the anti-buggery law. British Prime Minister David Cameron recently threatened to withhold aid from countries whose governments did not repeal anti-homosexual laws. And this sparked much discussion among Jamaicans locally and in the diaspora. Prime Minister Holness says that the international community must remember that Jamaica is a democratic country where people are talking about the issue, and democracy will eventually allow the people to settle on a position. Jamaica's Prime Minister has asserted although an individual's private space must be protected, the law must consider the impact a person's behavior may have on the public. Governments, he says, have to pay close attention to this. Meanwhile, the lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender LGBT rights group J-Flag has claimed that the United Nations Human Rights Committee has asked for Jamaica to act on protecting and promoting the rights of homosexuals, bisexuals, and transgender people. According to the Jamaica Forum for Lesbians, All Sexuals and Gays, JFLAG, the UN committee also requested that Jamaica reports on the proposed steps by next year. JFLAG said the UN committee has requested that the government moves towards amending the Bugger Law and protect LGBT people and human rights activists. The human rights group also disclosed that the committee recommended a review of the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms so that discrimination on the grounds of sex, orientation, and gender identity may be prohibited. Executive Director of JFLAG, Dane Lewis, speaks briefly with the Gleaners' Fiona Loney.
We're very encouraged by the Prime Minister's statement, hoping that he will demonstrate his leadership and begin the conversation at a level that requires a very balanced conversation towards recognizing the need for protecting people's civil and political rights. So we stand ready to work with the government to ensure that come 2012, when it's time to report, that Jamaica will have something better to report than previously.
The whole idea of legislation to legalize same-sex marriage, I think they still have a long way to go.
That's attorney Wayne Golding, advisor to Jamaica's government and diaspora.
They're using the proper channel to address whatever issue is there.
Last year, we issued 8,313 licenses, and we provided the Minister of Finance or the Tax Administration in Jamaica with 33,252,000. We are doing well, Madam Speaker, but we don't mind more marriages so we can provide more, more money to the Ministry of Finance.
That's not a way to look at it.
Right.
Stability.
No, but in truth, Madam Speaker, we enjoy when people come for their marriage license because it means that a family will be created.
And in case there was any doubt yet as to where exactly the government stood on the progressive view welcomed by many, the minister went deeper.
Or at least husband and wife. Madam Speaker, we have had people coming in now. We have to be clear and let it be clear. We do not support same-sex marriage as yet, or ever. The truth of the matter, people have been coming asking us for marriage license for two same-sex. This is, at the moment, is not permissible.
He then continued to boast that nearly 100% of thousands of applications relating to marriage matters are handled within a 24-hour period.
Where there is a problem is where there's a divorce. We have to wait and make sure that the divorce is not fraudulent, because we have had that problem before, Madam Speaker. So we check with the Supreme Court to ensure that the divorce is a valid one.
In our country, we will have our morals. We will protect our children. And we are making this law. We are making this law for ourselves. We are making this law for our children. We are making this law for the children of our children. This country will stand firm. And once it passed, I can tell you, Madam Speaker, we are going to reinforce the law enforcement officers to make sure that homosexuals have no space in Uganda.
I beg to move.
Flash the camera.
These technophones you are using.
When you carry out acts of homosexuality through force or duress or undue influence, then the law defines that as aggravated homosexuality. And what is the punishment? The maximum punishment is death.
Of the submissions so far, I want to give opportunity to those who are against to speak. Any person honorable members, any honorable member who disagrees with the submissions just made by the honorable and the Apia Kubi, that all the 275 are in support of the bill. Anybody who disagrees, be on your feet and I will recognize you. Honorable members, since all members are in support of the bill, honorable members, will you, honorable members, I definitely is not going to gag the House, no. I will definitely give you opportunity to expound and improve further the submissions that have been made, so that at the consideration stage, we'll be enriched by your contributions to make proper amendments to the bill. I don't intend to prevent you from contributing, but I just wanted everybody to be clear that none is against the bill. Then we move on.